Hello, aspirants. Welcome to the Hi-Fi of the Day, Daily Current Affairs by Alchemy IAS Institute. I am Suhas, and we are going to discuss the 5 most important news topic of the day. Why the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change process must be reformed. What is an issue? In recent years, it is evident that the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is not effectively working towards the end goal, that their actions are not being effectively implemented, or as like the plans are not being effectively implemented. What are the reasons? The outcome is weaker than expected. Like there is no enforcement mechanism is there, and there is no accountability, or as like lack of accountability is there. Um, the if some country is not implying or is like complying with the UNFCCC's norms, there is no accountability is there. Consensus rule is there because like more than 190 plus countries are there, and all the countries consent should be uh, get for implementing any new mechanism that is actually create a bottleneck in implementation, and marginalization and vulnerable countries are most affected due to this conventional norms, because if they, even though they are not responsible for the climate damages more, but they are suffering a lot. That marginalized countries are suffering a lot, and the developed countries, they are not much suffered due to the norms, even though they are responsible for more carbon emission and climate change and damages. And fossil fuel industries are influenced in the UN, have much influence in the UNFCCC, and the countries like Dubai is hosting the UNFCCC's meeting, that the countries, that economy is much relied on the fossil fuels. And recently, US withdrawn from the UNFCCC's talks after the second entry of the President Donald Trump. That is also a concern. So, what is the proposed reform for this? At Bonn climate meeting, it is proposed that the discussion time or the speech time should be limited, and these bottleneck issues like consensus rule should be changed, that the majority should get full for implementing, or as like for concluding to any norms, that we don't need to wait for that 190 plus countries consensus. And more participation of NGOs also should be added with this, and from civil and society NGOs rules, that NGO should be added. And Brazil's role again, that Brazil is going to host for a COP 30. So Brazil have a major say in this conference. So Brazil can propose these kind of changes. And climate finance deadlock, that we are expected from the developed countries, more financial contribution will be there, but it was not even like it expected 1.3 trillion dollars, but only 300 million dollars have been collected from the developed countries, and developing countries are not getting enough share of this. That is also a concern here. And BRICS stand says that BRICS is saying like this differential treatment, or else like the developed country are should be more empathize, or like more flexible towards these norms, and the developing countries should be getting more benefits, or like developing countries should be getting more flexibility over this. India's global south outreach. Recently, the Prime Minister visited that countries like Argentina, Ghana, then the islands like Trinidad Islands, Tobago Islands, Namibia. So, what is this? What is the significance of Prime Minister's visit? India, when India is more reliant, or it's like more close to Israel, it is getting a perception that India is more pro-West, or it's like India is not getting the support of the global south. So the background was Gaza war and the global south response. Like the global south often seen Israel as an aggressor, but India, when it is more close with the Israel, so India also is named, or is like tagged as a pro-Western, or as like pro-aggressor kind of a country. So India is recently trying to rebalance these issues. Like India is rebalancing, like when that meeting with that BRICS financial ministers meeting with Russia, India condemned Israel's act on that humanitarian basis, and that Rio summit also, like BRICS Rio summit also, India condemned that the Israel's attack on Gaza. and this terrorist kind of actions by Israel. So strategic balance, like Israel is actually India's long-term friend, and Israel is one of the major defense tie and supplier of arms and ammunitions. So we have to balance both Israel and the global south. And regarding Pakistan, like when Operation Sindoor being like operated, like that time, the global south was not supporting India. Global south was seeing Pakistan's civilians lose instead of like India's Pahalgam attack. So what India did is, India diplomatic win happened in BRICS enforcement. Like when India quoted that Iran's issue, or sorry, and the Gaza's issue, that India quoted the paragraph of terrorism. Other countries also started quoting about the terrorism and condemned that Pakistan's attack at Pahalgam. Even the China quoted about the anti-terrorism kind of a statement in BRICS summit. And the key takeaway for India, India is actually taking a give and take policy. Like India is giving that diplomacy of like India is giving a paragraph of terrorism, and India is gaining the edge over there in with the Pakistan, like citing the Iran's and Gaza's thing. And India is actually trying to get an emotional or as like a soft power diplomacy in global south. That's also a matter. India's claim on an inequality converted the weak point. What is inequality, and why? What is the India's claim? India is saying like that inequality is being reduced. So what is why how India is saying that? We have to understand the Gini index or Gini coefficient. The Gini coefficient measures the inequality, that income distribution or like in wealth distribution among a society. That the coefficient will be from 0 to 1. 0 means perfect equality, 1 means perfect inequality. Okay, that value will be between 0 to 1, or it's like 0 to 100%. Okay, but what is an issue with the Gini interpretation of India? One thing is, India is using the consumption Gini coefficient. India is calculating consumption, not income. But the problem is, while we are calculating the consumption, that rich people, they will be saving majority chunk of their wealth, and they will be spending not that much. So while we are calculating the consumption Gini, what happens? We will not get the actual value of inequality. Okay, so actually what we have to calculate, we have to calculate the income inequality, and non-comparable with the other countries. Like other countries are using the income Gini. We are not using income Gini, we are using consumption Gini. So we cannot compare with other countries, and ignoring other inequality estimates. Like we are depending on this tax or like consumption data only. We are not depending on that income tax data and survey data. That is another problem. And survey data limitation is there, like we are not getting correct data from the rich people. That is another problem. And flows in the Gini index, that we are using that consumption Gini only, and Gini is actually that very less sensitive. So what happens when the income distribution or it's like the consumption distribution changes also, that Guinea's change will be very less. So that is also a problem. The sensitivity is very low, and the implication of misleading inequality, like when we are expressing, or it's like when we are presenting our inequality data like this, we will not able to plan the government policies properly. Like we are feeling like, or we are presenting that we are a country reducing the inequality, we are moving towards the inequality, but the fact is actually we are not reducing. That inequality is more than the colonial time. Like how the colonial time inequality was there, now the inequality is more than that. So that proper implementation of policy and the framework of policy cannot be happen when we are not presenting the perfect inequality thing. Just a moment. Okay, there was a study, or it's like there was a controversy that the palm oil's health issue. Palm oil is being used for like making chips and all this, like packed food items. So is palm oil is actually safe or not? Like there were some YouTubers saying that palm oil is dangerous. So what is the reality? What is the scientific perspective of this? See, in palm oil, if you check that saturated fatty acid level, it's around 40 grams. And mono unsaturated fatty acid, it's also around 40 grams, and the 40%, and polyunsaturated fatty acid is around 20%. So that means like this saturated fatty acid is, it's bad fatty acid, that is there, but that other mono unsaturated fatty acid and polyunsaturated fatty acid, these are good cholesterol. So these things are there. If you compare this saturated fatty acid, compare with the other oils like the coconut oil, the palm oil has very less bad cholesterol inducing that saturated fatty acid. So palm oil is not bad, or else like palm oil is not dangerous. Okay, so what are the pros of palm oil? Palm oil, that hydrogenated needed like a semi-solid room temperature is, and it is like, it is non-hydrogenated, that way we can it is semi-solid at room temperature, which will not be solid, so no trans fats there, and it contains uh, tocotrienols, like a form of vitamin that antioxidants and may reduce the cholesterol, and long shelf life is there, affordability is there because useful in food industry. That's why palm oil is affordable and more being used in food industries. Cons are like high saturated fatty acid is consumed in excess. Like there is a guideline that how much consumption a person should be person should be consumed, like for a healthy person, and the oil should not be reheated. These are the guidelines that ICMR dietary guidelines on fatty acids and oils. There is there. If it is consumed high, it will lead to like heart attack, strokes, and a type 2 diabetes. And this common misconception like palm oil is a bad, that is actually not correct. So what is carbon border adjustment mechanism? Carbon border adjustment mechanism by European Union, and what is the stance of BRICS? So how this carbon border adjustment mechanism works? European Union is taxing for imports for goods which generate during the manufacturing process, which generated carbon emission, an extra price. If they are importing the such goods from other country, importers have to purchase the carbon certificate. So this is how the mechanism works. EU's justification is that we, by implementing these things, we can reduce the carbon emission, and we are pro environmental. That kind of justification is that why BRICS and developing countries are opposing this carbon border adjustment mechanism. One is it is unilateral and discriminatory, that the developed countries will be more suffering, that the export will be costlier, and it is against the WTO norms, that discriminatory mechanism for one countries, and it hurts the export competitiveness and violates the Paris Agreement, that for climate change the economical fallout should not happen for developed countries. That norms also being violated here, and it undermines the climate equity here when the developed countries export is being more charged for this carbon emission reduction. Finally, the current affairs drill question of the day with reference to European Union's carbon border adjustment mechanism. Consider the following statement. CBIM imposes tax on goods imported into European Union based on this carbon emission during the period. It exempted all import from the developed countries under the principle of common but differential responsibility. CBIM aims to prevent carbon leakage by ensuring that EU industries do not relocate or countries with lenient emission norms. The mechanism has been welcomed by all BRICS nations as a step towards a global climate equity. So check the options here, the statements here. Consider which of the above statements are correct. Options are given here. Comment your right answer below the comment section.